Hey guys, I'm Nick and welcome back to the channel. Or if you're new here, please don't forget to subscribe for all the latest Star Trek Picard news and other great sci-fi TV shows. So today we're talking about episode 8 of Picard, Broken Pieces. And boy, did we get a lot of exposition in this episode or what. It was very much a kind of a ship in the bottle kind of episode where it was a lot of just characters talking with one another, but we did find out a crap ton of information about what's been going on in the galaxy and a bit of the history behind the Zhat Vash. Let's take a look through the episode, see if we can unpack some of this gigantic exposition that fell onto us. So for starters, we begin in the Vate sector on one of these planets that the Zhat Vash found this, it looks like a table, a table of energy, which has been left behind centuries ago by some sort of ancient race. We don't know anything about this race. They're an unknown race. The Romulans don't know who left it. All we know is this unknown race left this energy table that the Romulans have called admonishment behind, and it's like a beacon that transmits a warning to everybody. Don't make sense, because if you make sense, they're gonna destroy everything. So as these Romulans are going a bit crazy, pulling their hair out and blowing their brains out and so forth, we get a few flashes of these images that are disturbing them so much. And they begin with a shot of a fetus in the womb, followed by like a wattle type flower. We get a shot of an android's face, which then dissolves into what appears to be Data's face. Or is it in fact Law's face? Not sure. An image of a rotting carcass of a fox. Some sort of very ominous looking anomaly or wormhole type energy creature coming out of space. The shot of a city in clouds, and the shot of a kind of a tower reaching up to the sky. The Romulans obviously taken this very seriously and have set up the Zhat Vash to make sure they carry on the mantra of whichever race left this energy table warning beacon thing in place. Don't make sense past a certain level of evolution, otherwise they will all kind of turn on you and destroy the galaxy and everything. Which is kind of like a theme we've had many times before in science fiction. I mean, Battlestar Galactica, they had the synthetic life forms that were created by humans and then rebelled. Same thing with The Matrix, same thing with The Terminator. It is a very, very used theme in science fiction where humans make synthetic life, whether it be AI or androids or whatever, and that AI then basically turns on its creators. It's been around for years, and it's obviously continuing the tradition in Picard. So our flashback basically tells us that after looking at the warning admonishment beacon thing by this ancient race, Narissa, who is part of the Zhat Vash with Commodore O, they are the only ones to kind of survive. All the other Romulans that kind of put their hands on this thing, they all blow their brains out and rip their face apart and, you know, go mental and so forth. Here we learn that Ramda is Narissa and Narek's auntie. She took them in after their parents died, and she's one of the Romulans that placed their hands on this and went mental and so forth and learned all this crazy stuff about synthetics and whatnot. And she's kind of gone a bit mad because of it. And this is where we kind of get the gist that basically the fact that Ramda had all this information in her head from the admonishment about these crazy ideas and visions of synthetics destroying the world. This is what sent the Borg crazy when they assimilated her ship. They just couldn't cope with all these images and stuff that Ramda had in her head about synthetics and everything, you know, wiping out the planet and all this negative stuff. So it basically sent all the drones mental, and that's how the Borg cube basically shut itself down. This planet at the start that O and Narissa and Ramda are on is clearly one of these planets in the Vate sector that is most likely Soji and Dahj's homeworld, where all the androids have been created and where Maddox has done his research and all that sort of stuff. On the Borg cube, we learn that Narissa has dispatched a fleet of Romulan ships off to the location where they believe Soji's homeworld is. 7 of 9 has responded to Elnor's Fenris Ranger's distress beacon, where she's come to his aid, and Rios has been introduced to Soji, which is kind of freaked him out a lot, because there's a bit of history there. This is not the first time he has seen Soji's face before. 9 years ago, when Rios was first officer on board the Ibn Majid under the command of Captain Vandermeer, they had a first contact situation. They were in the Vate sector, where Soji's homeworld is. They meet two individuals in a small ship, which they bring on board. Captain Vandermeer contacts Starfleet, and shortly thereafter, it would appear that Commodore O, who is part of Starfleet security, has gotten wind of this and has sent the order out to Captain Vandermeer to assassinate these two people that they've brought on board. The leader ambassador doesn't have a name, but refers to himself as Beautiful Flower. It seems odd to me that the second guest on board their ship was this girl called Jana, who, funnily enough, looks exactly like Daj and Soji. So she's obviously an android, and it would seem clear that the person she's travelling with is also an android. However, we don't get a name. We know it's a male. We know they referred to themselves as Beautiful Flower. And Captain Vandermeer was ordered by Commodore O to assassinate both of these people. And this is where Rios had seen Soji's face before and why he's gone a bit crazy. It seems somewhat convenient that there's no visual record of Beautiful Flower. There is no name for him. He wasn't given a name of any kind, which kind of makes me think this is a character we have seen before. If it wasn't a character we'd seen before, they probably would have just given him a name. Oh, this bloke, yeah, his name's Fred or whatever, you know. But to be all kind of mysterious and to say, oh, he gave himself this name, Beautiful Flower, and he was travelling with Jana, and da-da-da-da. Both of these individuals were identified as synthetics and then asked to be assassinated by Captain Vandermeer by O. I almost wonder, was this Beautiful Flower, could it have been Law maybe? I'm not sure. I think if it was Law, I mean his face, you know, clearly being the same as Data's, would have been somebody that Rios was aware of or knew to look at. I think Data's face would have been renowned throughout Starfleet. So if this other ambassador that was on board the Ibn Majid with Jana was Law, surely Vandermeer and Rios would have been aware of his appearance. So it probably has to be somebody that they wouldn't immediately recognise. However, I do think the whereabouts of Law is certainly a question that needs to be asked, and I did do a video on this last month, so check it out. They established that Maddox's flesh and blood androids are made in pairs. Daj and Soji were made in a pair as sisters, which then leads me to believe if Jana was another one of these Soji Daj style androids, then clearly, even though that Jana was killed by Captain Vandermeer and ejected into space as part of a cover-up, then surely there has to be another android out there with the same face as Daj and Soji, because surely Jana would have had to be made as a pair as well. One part of the detective work that Raffi did about this eight-sunned star system, which turns out to be the conclave of eight that she had previously researched, and she thought it was 8 people as part of some sort of cabal conspiracy thing, but it actually turns out to have been reference to this system in the Vate sector. The Romulans found this admonishment which has 8 suns, which is not a naturally occurring phenomenon. It's so rare that somebody of immense power has had to drag 8 suns all together with this one planet in the middle of them. One of the holograms says, why would you do this? Well, to show off. Well, who would show off at their ability to move multiple suns around different systems? That sounds to me like something Q would do. He's a bit of a show-off, and he certainly has probably done things like moving suns around planets just for a bit of a laugh. So I wonder whether the creation of this Vates sector system with the 8 suns was some sort of weird ego creation thing that Q has done, or whether it's the Q we know, or another Q, or something to that effect. But there certainly aren't many races in the galaxy we're aware of that would have the immense power to move suns around apart from the Q continuum. The other thing I thought was quite interesting that would happen at the end of the episode when Soji set course through the transwarp conduit to her homeworld was that the compass that Kestra gave her, which Kestra had gotten from this Captain Crandall on Nepenthe, which was previously broken, basically pointed in the right direction when they set course. And it kind of leads me to believe maybe this Captain Crandall that Kestra knows, maybe could he be Q, or a Q of some kind perhaps. So it'll be very interesting to see whether or not Q comes into this story in the last 1 or 2 episodes. And Raffi hypothesises that O and the Jadvash were in control of the whole synth attack on Mars. They probably clearly hacked the synthetics to make them turn against humanity. They needed a huge event to basically stop all synthetics being created and to create the ban. So it turns out that O was in pretty much control of the whole synth attack on Mars that stopped synthetics being created and placed a ban on all synthetic life. Now, in terms of activities on the Borg cube, we've got Narissa dispatching a Romulan fleet to the synth homeworld in the Vate sector, so the Romulans are on their way to Soji's homeworld. Meanwhile, while 7 of 9 has saved Elnor from the Romulans, they go to the Queen's cell and basically try to wake up the remaining Borg drones, because Hugh has only kind of saved maybe a couple of hundred of these drones, but there's still thousands of drones in their alcoves in a dormant state on board the cube. So Narissa's wanting to cut and run. She's now got the location of the synth homeworld and she's cutting all of her ties with the Borg cube. So she's starting to go round, she's like shooting XBs, and 7 and Elnor can see that the life signs of various different XBs are disappearing off the little control console she's got going on there, and 7's not too happy about it. So she kind of plugs herself in as a temporary Borg queen to try to take control of the cube. However, she's not quite fast enough as Narissa orders for all of the Borg drones to be ejected into space, so there's no more Borg drones on board the cube. I think there's probably a handful of XBs and stuff still there, but the large majority of drones in their alcoves have been ejected into space, which 7 wasn't particularly pleased about, but they've managed to regain control of the cube. Towards the end there, a whole pack of XBs take out Narissa's second in command, and they're swarming her. They're trying to get her, but it looks like, if you look closely, it looks like she gets beamed away at the last second. So she's obviously got some sort of emergency distress transporter that beams her away as all the Borg drones are trying to attack her. So she's obviously off on a Romulan ship somewhere, about to head off to the synth homeworld. Elnor and 7 of 9, they've regained control of the cube, and the question remains, what will they do with it now they've got themselves a fully repaired and operational Borg cube? Will they use the spatial transjector to beam themselves across the galaxy to the Vate sector? Will they fly the Borg cube through a transwarp conduit and join the fight with Picard and his crew on the last Serena? I'm sure we will find out in the next episode or two. There's a couple of cool scenes in this episode with Picard kind of talking to Jurati. She's very kind of heartfelt and remorseful about what she's done to Maddox, but she's clearly going a bit mental. All these visions that O has put in her head about the end of the world and synthetics destroying everything has got her completely messed up, but at least she's not topping herself like the rest of the Romulans. Speaking of which, this is a very common theme within this episode. There's so many references in this episode to people blowing their brains out. You've got Romulans at the start of the episode blowing their brains out because of what they see in the visions from the admonishment thing that they all touch. We've got Jurati saying she thinks about topping herself on a daily basis because of these visions that she has in her head. Raffi says she's going to shoot her brains out because she can't get a glass of red wine out of the replicator. Captain Vandermeer, Rios's old captain, blowing his brains out after he killed the 2 androids, Jana and Beautiful Flower, on board the Ebed Majid. There's many references to people committing suicide through eating a pistol in this episode. It's a very prominent theme. Despite this episode being filled with exposition, we get a really nice scene with Picard and Clancy in this episode too, where Picard has asked Rios to open up a secure subspace channel to Starfleet, and Picard has this nice little chat with Clancy in his office there, where he's basically kind of saying, I told you so, you thought I was a stupid old man with a bunch of nonsense, but actually it turns out I was right after all. And Clancy kind of acknowledges the fact that he was correct, but Picard's going off on one of his rants, and we've seen before that Clancy is no stranger to using the fruity language, so she promptly tells him to shut the f*** up so that she can actually have a say, and she says, look, just chill. I'm sending a squadron of ships to rendezvous with you at DS-12. So hopefully we're going to see some backup arrive for the last Serena, and that we finally get to see maybe some new Federation ship designs, which we kind of really haven't got to see much before. We've seen old stuff going back to some of the clips and whatnot from the Utopia Planitia attack, but we're yet to kind of see any Federation starships present day. I've only really got to see some Romulan ships, Borg Cube and the Last Serena. We haven't really kind of seen too many other ships at all. So it'll be good to see, hopefully in the last episode or two, some new Federation starships with a bit of Starfleet action there perhaps. We've also got a lovely little scene between Soji and Picard talking a bit about the history of Data and what Data was like, how Data felt about Picard, how Picard felt about Data. And there's a nice little moment there between Picard and Soji where Soji just kind of comes out of the blue and says to Picard that Data loved Picard, which kind of almost seems like Soji keeps getting these new pieces of information activate within her. Every time new information kind of comes her way, little new memory engrams seem to spark off and trigger other things to unlock within her as well. So it kind of feels like when Picard was asking about Data and all that sort of stuff, and she just came out with this thing, oh, yep, Data loved you, whether this is one of these little positronic neurons inside her that's firing to kind of indicate that Data is in some way alive within Soji's positronic matrix. Looking at Rios's quarters when he's having a bit of a meltdown and when he's going through all his kind of personal knickknacks and belongings and his old Starfleet uniform and his old rank insignias and pips and comm badge and all that sort of thing. We also see that there is a very high number of mermaid-based trinkets and drawings and little figurines and statues and so forth in his quarters. Rios seems to have this fixation or fetish towards mermaids. I'm not quite sure of the connection with the mermaids and Rios, but no doubt there wouldn't be this many mermaids scattered throughout his quarters, and they clearly showed quite a few shots of them in this episode, if it maybe wasn't an important little hint. Maybe the mermaid fixation is in reference to Jana, as she was kind of like this exotic woman that he met on a mission and she ended up being killed, but maybe they had a thing together, an intimate relationship or something like that during the time she was on board the Ibn Majid with him. So maybe there's a connection there between the mermaids and reference to Jana. One moment I have to say that I really laughed out loud in was the bit at the end where Picard sat down in the captain's chair, brought up the holographic display, was about to start doing things, but then worked out, hey, I don't know how to work this ship. It's kind of too new for my old brain to understand. I thought that was a classic moment. This was a good episode. I enjoyed it. Obviously, a lot of exposition. It was just sitting back while the characters just spouted history and backstory and exposition by the truckload. So we obviously got to learn a lot in this episode. Very talky-based characters just sitting around the sets, talking about stuff and explaining stuff, which kind of almost leads me to believe that maybe they've saved a bit of money on this episode, so that in the last 2 episodes of the show, we're probably going to have some big gigantic space battle, because we know we've got a squadron of Federation ships rendezvousing with Picard to back him up. We know we've got a squadron of Romulan ships all heading for Soji's planet. They're all going to end up there. We also don't know what's going on with Elnor and Seven with the Borg Cube. Are they going to enter the fight? It'll be very exciting to see that. Can't wait to see some new Federation ships and maybe what they look like, and also how this whole story plays out. Whether or not the instigator of this conclave of 8, whether that might have something to do with Q, because that definitely smells like Q a mile away to me. Be very interesting to see that. What do you guys reckon though? Do you reckon that's Q? Do you reckon that's something else? What about Soji and Jana and the beautiful flower person? Who do you think the beautiful flower person is? Could it be Lore? Could it be somebody else? Could it be another android with a face of somebody we perhaps have encountered before in the Star Trek universe? What do you reckon? Leave a message in the comment section. Let's get the chat started. As always, guys, please don't forget to subscribe, like, share, comment on this video, and I'll see you next time for my next review.